according to the cloud. I want to say a good evening to you all on a Monday evening. It's just a tick or two past 5 p.m. and I find myself in Topanga Canyon, California right now. I know you guys are from all over the creation, and I want to welcome you all. Tonight we have a very, very special time together as we're discussing navigating early recovery and coming back from relapse, also how to prevent the next relapse. So very, very, very important subject matter, particularly important for the community of Recovery 2.0, because if you want to reach Recovery 2.0 and build to long-term recovery, we are not going to want to skip over a lot of the things we have to do, the fundamental things that we have to do in early recovery to support our base, our foundation of recovery, so that the Recovery 2.0 practices of yoga and meditation, nutrition, and healthy lifestyle choices, all of those are supplemental to the core philosophy of recovery. So we'll get into that tonight. So good. So as always, to begin, a good place to begin, to start, is to stop. So I'd like you to sit up tall. If you are in a chair, you can place your feet flat onto the ground. If you are on the floor, cross-legged, wonderful. Please try to sit in such a way that your spine extends. And you'll notice as you extend your spine, your heart naturally lifts. Allow the palms to come face up with the thumb and forefinger together on the knees. So you're sitting in a typical meditative posture. Allow the eyes to close. Allow the shoulders to relax. Draw your attention inside and take a deep inhale. And a full exhale. Take a deep inhale and simply notice that you're inhaling. Exhale fully and simply notice that you're exhaling. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Make sure for this exercise to inhale through the nose and also to exhale through the nose. And exhale. Deep inhale. Make a mental note, I am inhaling. Full exhale. Make a mental note, I am exhaling. Deep inhale. Full exhale. Take your time. Inhale. And exhale. Keep going. The eyes are closed. Gently aware of the breath. On every inhale, just mentally saying, I'm inhaling. With every exhale, mentally, I'm exhaling. Allow yourself this vacation from reaction, from reactivity, a vacation from doing, a vacation from pursuing, a vacation from having to do anything at all. Take a deep inhale. And a full exhale. And gently come with the eyes open. Okay. So good evening. I'm wondering who is in the room that would be willing to say, I'm in early recovery. Early recovery meaning, let's just say anybody in the room in their first 30 days of continuous recovery, continuous sobriety. That could mean drugs and alcohol, or it could mean any other addiction, food, sex, codependency. Okay. We've got one day, 20 days, 11 days. Yes. Day 10 back. Okay. 2 days. Yes. A lot of yeses from folks. 3 days, 5 days, early recovery, 10 days. Okay. Just incredible. Just incredible. Just incredible. You guys, first of all, let me just express to you, you are so in the right place. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for your commitment to your newfound recovery. And I'm so honored and excited to talk to you. I'm going to make the next 52 minutes worth it. That's my prayer. May this next 52 minutes be really, really helpful to you. Okay. So, addiction. The definition that I'm working with is any behavior that you continue to do despite the fact that it brings negative consequences into your life. Any behavior that you continue despite that it brings negative consequences into your life. We are aware of and we see 6 major forms of addiction. We either see them in ourselves or we see them in our loved ones, friends, colleagues, and the people that we come across in our life. The 6 big, most visible addictions are drugs, alcohol, food. With food addiction, we're talking about emotional eating, binge eating, overeating, eating disorders such as anorexia, bulimia, that kind of thing. People addictions, codependency, major relationship issues, and sex addiction. And then money addictions, gambling, constantly being in a state of debt, over shopping, this kind of thing. And then the 6th, of course, is technology. All the ways that we use technology as a way to avoid our life, as a way to avoid this present moment. Okay, those are the big 6. Now, beyond the big 6, it's worth mentioning the 4 aggravations. The 4 aggravations I also consider to be addictions: negative thinking, self-doubt, procrastination, and resentment. Negative thinking, self-doubt, procrastination, and resentment. Okay? So there are many people that come to retreats or workshops, and I ask everybody, when I name the big 6, is there anybody in the room who has not been affected by any of these big 6 addictions? And every now and then somebody raises their hands. I have not had any issues with any of those things. And me personally, I'm like, wow, that's incredible, because I've had issues with all of those things. But then I bring up the 4 aggravations: negative thinking, self-doubt, procrastination, resentment. And I say, okay, is there anybody left here who has had no issue with any of those 4 things? And very, 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 very rarely does someone say, I don't have an issue with negative thinking, self-doubt, procrastination, or resentment. Almost the entire human race has at least experienced those things, and most of us may actually be stuck in those things for long periods of time before we realize, oh my God, I'm stuck. I need to do something to stop this behavior. But what I do notice from a lot of people when I bring up the 4 aggravations is those are not addictions, Tommy. Those are not addictions. That's what I get from folks. And I say, well, you may not crave those things like you would crave, a drug or something, but they still fit my definition of addiction. Any behavior you continue to do, despite the fact that it brings negative consequences into your life. Negative thinking, self-doubt, procrastination, and resentment, they bring negative consequences into our lives. And if we're really, really going to get sober and thrive in our recovery, we're going to want to even move beyond those things. We're going to want to see them when they come up. We're going to want to develop the capability to move even beyond those 4 aggravations. Now, why do I bring up the big 6 and the 4 aggravations when I'm talking to you about early recovery? I simply want you to have an expanded understanding of addiction, because I feel if you have an expanded understanding of addiction, you begin to understand yourself. You begin to understand yourself better. You also understand that everyone in the human race is dealing with addiction on some level or another. That we who have had severe drug addiction or alcoholism or whatever the addiction was, we who have really, really, really gone down the road of addiction are just a slightly more extreme version of the rest of the human race, who also are dealing with these things, perhaps in more subtle ways, but they're dealing with it nonetheless. And I have found that the number one thing that a person needs to recover from addiction is the ability for surrender. Now, before you hang up the phone and close your computer right in my face, before you get upset with me for using the S word, let me explain myself just a little bit. Surrender in our society is linked to weakness. It's linked to failure. We had to surrender. We surrendered. We couldn't hack it, so we quit. We surrendered. And what I have found is that perspective on surrender is not only incomplete, but it's actually inaccurate. Surrender is the release of that which stands in the way of forward progress. Surrender is the release of that which stands in the way of forward progress. It is actually necessary if we are going to make progress in our life. Who needs to surrender ultimately? Everybody. Everybody. What are we surrendering to? Some of us at some point in our life might have said, well, I'm surrendering to my drug addiction. I'm surrendering to sex addiction. I'm surrendering to the fact that I can't overcome this thing. I have not been able to overcome this thing to this point in my life. I have to surrender, meaning open my mind, open my heart to receive support, help, input from someone or something else. So as you look at that idea, surrender actually means seeing what is. It is an acceptance of what is. So for me, for example, I first got sober, first time ever, July 25th, 1989. I went to Hazelden, which is in Minnesota. I went to just outside of Minneapolis, and I went to treatment, and I got drug and alcohol treatment. And at that point, I would not say that I had surrendered. I would just simply say that I was desperate. Now, there's a difference between desperation and surrender. Do you guys get that? Do you guys see that there could be a difference between desperation and surrender? Very important here. Now, many, many people in 12-step programs, for example, speak about the gift of desperation. I got sober because of the gift of desperation. What that basically means is, because I had no other choice, because I could not think my way out of the corner or the hole that I had dug for myself, and because the opportunity to go to treatment was presented to me and I had no other choice, I had to take it. And that was a gift that came from the gift of my own desperation. So wonderful. The gift of desperation is a wonderful way to step onto a new path. However, ironically, unfortunately, so hard to understand until we understand it, but desperation is not a force by which we will likely stay sober. We may get sober out of desperation, but we will not necessarily stay sober out of desperation. Why not? Why not? Because our desperation, the state that we were in at the moment we had to make a decision, and the only thing presented to us, for example, for me, was treatment. You can go to treatment or you can go into the street. And for me, there was no choice. I'm going to treatment. I'm desperate. I can't think of anything else. I can't scheme. I can't manipulate or lie my way out of this. I'm desperate. Okay, what happens? I go to treatment. I'm on a new path now, a path of healing, even though I haven't chosen the path of healing yet. I had to go. I'm on a path of healing. So what happens when you get to treatment? Well, you start to sleep. You start to eat 3 meals a day. You start to talk to people. You start to have meetings with your counselor and meetings with your peers in group. And guess what? You start to feel better physically. Now, I'm coming from a background of pretty severe addiction, crack cocaine, heroin, alcohol, marijuana, all that mess. And so all of that drug addiction means that in my body, when I arrive at rehab, not only am I desperate mentally, spiritually, but I'm desperate physically. I'm weak, I'm tired, I'm sick, I don't feel well. I'm desperate. Well, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, guess what? I'm better. I'm physically, I feel better. I'm sleeping 8 hours a night. I'm eating 3 meals a day. And that desperation, that energy starts to shift. And you see, the minute that starts to shift, something else has to happen to grab us deeply. Something has to have weight in order for us to move forward, because that energy of desperation has now gone away. Can you guys relate to this? Have you ever felt that desperation and then felt it go away? Where in your mind, all of a sudden, you started saying certain things. Let me explain to you. In your mind, you'd say something like, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I overreacted. There was probably some other way that I could have gone. And here I am, trying to embrace this weird thing called recovery, which in Hazelden, in the treatment center I went to, had a lot to do with the 12 steps. So here I am thrust into this new way of being, and I'm sitting there thinking, I bet there's another way. You see, it's amazing because just 2 or 3 weeks before, I was as desperate and as low down as a person could be. Here we are 3 weeks later. It's like, maybe I overreacted. Maybe there's another way. So I want you, first of all, in early recovery, I want you to be on the lookout. I want you to be on the lookout for your ego recovery. Now, when your ego recovers, it starts saying this nonsense, and you're susceptible to it. The nonsense is things like, maybe I can drink again. Maybe I can, maybe if I smoked pot just on weekends, I can handle that. I remember how that used to be fun. And what your mind will do, the ego will recover, and it will start to pull from your memory. It will start to pull from your memory, but it's incredibly selective. So I want you to be on the lookout for this. Because in your memory, you don't just remember the bad times and how desperate you were and how horrible your life as a drug addict or addict of any kind might have been, what your ego will reach back into the recesses, and it will remember when it still worked. It will remember when it still worked. And every one of you knows what I'm talking about. You will remember how at the beginning of your drug use, at the beginning of your addiction, for at least a little while, that worked pretty nicely. And so your ego comes up and it's like, remember when? Have you seen this bullshit in your own head? It's unbelievable. It's so powerful. And it's so seductive because in that moment, what you remember is the memory of the positive thing that took place when you used to smoke pot in the early days, if you're me. So you go all the way back, you're 14 years old and you're giggling with friends and you've got community building and you feel like you're involved in this cool like ritual, and there's like herb and there's like fire and there's like, there's mischief and there's like, the forbidden thing is going on. So there's this like exciting thing, and all you can remember in that moment is the way it used to be. So the incredibly selective memory comes up and you're like, oh my God, well, why did I give that up? Now, wait a minute. Now things got pretty rough for me there, but they got rough because of the hard drugs. When the hard drugs came in, that's when it was rough for me. And so all of a sudden, now you're on a spiral. And it might be 11 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday afternoon, and you're out of rehab, and maybe you're 30 days sober, 40 days sober, maybe you're 10 days sober, whatever it is, and you're there on a Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock in the morning, and all you're thinking to yourself is the shittiest collection of thoughts possible. Is, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what I'm doing. I certainly don't know my purpose in the world. I'm in early recovery. My relationships aren't quite there yet. My family doesn't really trust me yet. God, who am I? Wow, I was a happier person when I was using drugs. And what you're doing right there is you're making your way down a little river, and let's call it, it's the river of relapse. And you're going down the river of relapse. You don't realize it yet. And you're making your way towards the two famous words that precede a relapse: fuck it. That's where you're headed. You're going to pull right over into the fuck it shores, and you're going to relapse. What is relapse? It does not mean you're a bad person. It does not mean you're a weak person. All it means is that you have not yet advanced in your consciousness to the place where you can hold that level of awareness where you realize that you going back to drugs and alcohol or whatever the addictive behavior is going to end in tears. It's going to end in tears. You don't know it yet. It's not clear to you in that moment because you're basing your actions in the present moment on the selective memory of your ego, which has reached back into your past to try to pull up some movies for you to watch, which show you a movie of you enjoying yourself the first few times you ever actually got high. And it's unfair because you're going to lose that one every time. So I want you to be on the lookout. You may have gotten sober out of desperation, but now you're going to have to stay sober because of something else. I'll tell you how it happened to me. But before I get to that, I just want to say, the desperation will wear off. It wears off for us all. And you need to be careful when you start hearing that thinking. Here's what you do about it. You need to be in a program of action. And part of your program of action is that when you identify that thinking, and you'll get better and better and better at hearing it quicker and quicker and quicker. And when it happens, what you're going to do is you're going to pick up the phone and you're going to call someone immediately. And that someone is going to be another person in recovery, your sponsor, your therapist, your yoga teacher, your meditation teacher, your nutrition coach, the people around you that you have built into your life plan who are going to support you when this kind of thinking takes place. If you sit with that thinking for too long, you'll go down the river of relapse. Does it make sense to you? Do you understand? Okay? So if I could give you one thing, one gift, one absolute, this is true, please don't doubt it. This is absolutely true, no matter what. The thing that has kept me sober for over 27 years is that I will not, even today, I will not sit with that thinking. I will not sit alone with that thinking, even 27 years later. I'm telling you, I'm not arrogant around my own ego. I am not arrogant around the dis-ease, the mental affliction of addiction is no joke. And because I have surrendered to it, I recognize it's bigger than me. I don't have to fight it toe to toe. Instead, at 27 years sober, I will pick up the phone. Hey, how are you? I am having a moment. Can you talk with me? Can you meet me for tea? Can we have a meal together? I need someone that I can connect with because I need to run this really, really shitty thinking by you, and it will help to bring me back to presence. Because when I'm in shitty thinking, where am I? I'm in the past, I'm in the future. I'm not being very present. So I need help, and I'm willing to ask for it. So that's the thing. Is you have got to recognize this thinking as soon as it happens, you see it as addictive thinking and you reach out right away. Now, if you have isolated yourself, which all of us do in addiction, and you're in early recovery, you may not be in the habit of reaching out to people. You may not have a group of people who are in recovery that you can call. You may not have therapists and sponsors and all of these people who would gladly give you their time if they knew that you needed help to stay sober. You may not have built that yet. So what do you have to do? Build your network immediately, every single day, right now. It's Monday night. It's 5:30 on the West Coast. Have you been to a place, any place, where recovery is taking place? That could be any 12-step meeting. That could be a smart recovery meeting. That could be a refuge recovery meeting. That could be a yoga of 12-step recovery meeting. That could be a recovery 2.0 meeting. That could be your therapist office or a yoga class for recovering people. But if you haven't been to any of those places today, and you haven't built up a community of people you can talk to, it's going to be much, much more difficult for you to stay sober. So you must understand this has got to be a daily, every day. Do not miss this opportunity to connect with people in recovery every single day. Now, is there anybody in this meeting right now who absolutely refuses to connect with other people in recovery? I want to know why. Is there anybody here who would refuse to connect with another person to save your own life? Okay, so far I think we're on the same page here. Okay, so when the desperation wears off, you need something else. Okay, here's what happened to me. We're going to come back to that point. But what happened to me after the desperation wore off, okay? I'm going to sum it up in one word. I call it floating. Floating, 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 okay? So I got out of treatment, and here was my approach to recovery in my life. I knew I wanted to stay sober. That I knew. I knew I wanted it. I actually wanted to stay sober. I remembered how I felt just 50 or 60 days ago, and I was like, I can't do that anymore. That was horrendous. I'm scared of returning to that state of mind and that state of body. So what I've been told is to go to 12-step meetings. Okay, so here I am in my life. Here's me. I'm in my life. Each day, I leave my life, come over here, I go to my 12-step meeting, check a little box, and then I return over here to my life. Here's my life. Each day, leave my life, go over here to a 12-step meeting, check the box off that I've been to the meeting, return back to my life. Okay. Now, this is an example of a poor way, an unskilled way to go about recovery or to go about trying to achieve anything, okay? Because what I've done is I've compartmentalized my life and my recovery. I must have missed the memo somewhere that my recovery and my life are integrated. They're not separate from each other. They're part of the same thing. I just somehow was floating through my life. What am I doing? I don't really know. Who am I? Not sure. Who should I be hanging out with? Not a clue. Floating, floating, floating through life. So what happens after a while is I start asking myself a question. Why bother going to these 12-step meetings? It's boring. There's no one there. No one seems to care about me, and I don't seem to care about any of them. Guess why? Because I have not let anyone know me. I have not reached out and tried to get to know anybody. It's 100% my fault. Absolutely. I'm just over here in my life, visit this little world over here that's becoming more and more boring. So after a while, you know what happens? You stop going. And that's what happened for me. There was no weight to going to those meetings. And so I just simply stopped. I stayed sober for a year. Maybe 6 months I was going to meetings, and then those meetings were tapering off for the next 6 months. By the end of the year, I remember getting a 1-year chip, how exciting that was. And I think it was 4 days later that I headed off into the Relapse River. Now, I had been in the Relapse River for a long time. I didn't know it, of course. But my relapse looked a lot different than my drug use, okay? My relapse looked a lot different than my drug use. What I mean by that is I actually, with one night exception, I never went back to hard drugs. I never went back to hard drugs because I was so terrified. There was one night of exception, and that was one of the worst nights of my life. But aside from that, I just floated. Smoke a little pot here, drink a little bit there, do some psychedelic drugs here or there. And quite frankly, none of it creating anything close to contentment or happiness or bliss. It was just creating more confusion, more sadness, more separation. And so I really got the opportunity to feel what it felt like to be using drugs and alcohol and to be miserable doing it without any relief at all. There was no memory of the way it used to be because it wasn't working for me anymore. So this is what happened for me. I wasn't desperate. This time I wasn't desperate. I was something else. Let's just say I was fed up. I was absolutely fed up with myself. Not because my parents were fed up with me, not because the law or the legal system was fed up with me, not because any authority figure was fed up with me. Now I was fed up with me. And that's a powerful place to be. That's a very, very powerful place to be. Now, when you are fed up with yourself and you really desire in your heart, you desire something different, now you have a chance. Now you have a chance, one day at a time, to sincerely be in recovery. And that's all you have, is one day at a time. So today, some of you are thinking, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this day. Some of you are thinking a thought like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through tomorrow. That thought has no relevance here because you only have today. But I'm interested in helping you to recognize the difference between desperation and being fed up with yourself and ready for a change. When you are sincerely fed up with yourself, and not because of a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a partner, but you really have had enough. That's where the grounding, that powerful foundation for a deeper recovery can take place. And that's exactly what happened to me. I returned, hang on. I returned to 12-step land, but this time I got a sponsor. I started getting involved. I started to work the steps, the actual steps. I was writing and reading out of the book, being guided by a sponsor through a process whose purpose is to help you get out of yourself and to have a spiritual experience, an awakening. I was connecting with people. It was different. And I wanted it. And you know, there's only one thing I wanted. There was only one thing I wanted out of the 12 steps. One promise. One thing I was interested in. And that one thing was, I want to wake up one day and I don't want to be thinking about drugs and alcohol. I want to be free of it. I don't want to have the strength to fend off thoughts every day. I don't want to live with those thoughts. I don't want to be constantly trying to combat a craving beyond my control. That is not a way to live. And I'm telling you guys, I am telling you guys that the 12 steps delivered that promise to me. It took about 9 months for me. 9 months into working the steps and finishing those steps and being involved, it happened. And I woke up one day and I realized I don't remember the last time I actually was thinking about using drugs or alcohol. Holy crap, I'm free. I'm really free. And here was the next thought. No, it was a feeling. Here was the feeling that accompanied that thought. The thought was, I'm free. The feeling was, I'm frightened. I'm frightened. I'm free and I'm frightened. Do you know what that fear was about for me? I did not want to lose what I now had. For the first time in my life that I could remember, I was free of this thing. My mind had changed. My body had changed. My spirit, my whole spirituality had changed. And I was so deeply moved by it that now I was actually frightened of losing it. And I thought to myself, shit, I'll do anything not to lose this. What do I have to do? What do I have to do? Well, that's not a bad place to be. Because you know what that is? It's humility. It's humility. It's, wow, this is important to me. I actually want this thing. This is important to me now. I'll do what I need to do to maintain this and to grow this. And so I set out to do that. And, part of that was to show up at meetings and to be helpful to other people. Part of that was to take other people through the steps. One of the greatest, most incredible journeys of my life was to take another human being through the steps, which I've done countless times now. And I strongly advise that you work through the steps, experience the thing that I'm telling you about, and then help another person go through, because boy, oh boy, that is something. That is something. And so what made it all possible for me was that humility, that I never got arrogant about addiction. I never said, I got this thing. What I've said is, today, I know what to do to move myself in the right direction. Today, I now know what to do. I'm aware of what to do because I've made myself aware. I've been given the gift of awareness through the actions I've taken, that I've been led to take, and one day at a time, freedom became a possibility. Now, I don't want to talk about Recovery 2.0. There's a whole membership, and you can come join us and do whatever you want with that. Some of you might be members, but that's another story. See, tonight, I'm just telling you about 1.0, right? How to navigate early recovery. Now, it might be valuable to quickly discuss the ways that are available to you now to get support, to get sober, and to stay sober in the early going, or if you're coming back from a relapse. There's really only a few options today, if you think about it. So number one, therapy. So a lot of people, like myself in the beginning, even before 12 steps, I was in a therapist's office. And first of all, therapy, there are so many different forms of therapy. I'm a strong believer in the power of that. I think if you get with a great therapist, that can be a person who's in your corner, who can really help point out your patterns, point out some blind spots, and they can help nudge you in the right direction. You can find therapists who are cognitive behavioral therapists, dialectical behavior therapists. You can find somatic healing therapists, spiritual psychologists, all kinds of therapists that work in different modalities, and all of those modalities can be super helpful. I believe that's important. It's been an important part of my recovery. What else? There's 12 steps. Now, often when a therapist, at least I think the great ones and the aware ones, when a therapist comes upon somebody who's in chronic addiction, very often as part of their treatment, they will recommend that they go to 12-step programs. Now, I want to be very clear with you all. 12 steps are not the only way to get sober. There are infinite ways, infinite approaches, but they're very, very powerful. They have worked for so many. And while it's not a perfect system, and while some of the people in 12-step programs might rub you the wrong way, or their approach to it might be too much this or too little that or whatever, it's too effective to overlook. The 12 steps are too effective to overlook, and I believe something about the 12 steps. I believe whether you are struggling with an addiction or not, I believe everybody should go through the 12 steps. Why? Because it brings you to a greater depth of understanding of yourself. It brings you to a greater depth of truth. And if for no other reason than to have greater compassion for yourself and understanding, that's a good reason right there to go through the 12 steps. Of course, if you're stuck in chronic addiction, you go through the 12 steps because they're powerful as a transformative vehicle. They'll be the vehicle for your transformation to help you get from where you are now to that place of freedom, where one day at a time, you have an opportunity to live beyond the affliction of addiction. So you've got therapy, you've got 12-step programs, you have alternatives to 12-step programs. You've got, as I mentioned a few of them earlier, you've got refuge recovery. That's a Buddhist approach to recovery. Wonderful. If you have a problem with God or that word, or you've investigated the 12 steps and you've really given it a try, but you've decided it's just not for you, well, you might try the refuge recovery route, or you can try Nikki Meyer's incredible work, the yoga of 12-step recovery. So bringing yoga and 12 steps together, very, very, very powerful thing. There's smart recovery, sure. And you've got a slew of others. So there are lots of programs, and the main thing is that you got to be in one of them. So I said earlier, if I could give you any one thing, it would be learn to recognize the addictive voice in your head, and when it starts, pick up the phone and connect with somebody. Second thing is every one of us needs a community. You cannot do this alone. You can't. Have to have a community of support. So which community is going to be your community? If you don't have one, if you don't have a community, that's okay. It's not a point of shame. It's that you need to immediately take action to move in the direction of building a community and going to one of these choices that we're talking about now. So again, therapy, 12 steps, all the different kind of 12-step programs. They now have over 200 different programs that have adopted the 12 steps as their method of healing. So that's, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Al-Anon, and Codependence Anonymous. You've got your Cocaine Anonymous, Marijuana Anonymous, Adult Children of Alcoholics. You've got all kinds of programs to treat all kinds of issues. Now, I just want to tell you about one important thing about the 12 steps. You have 12-step program. That's actually working the 12 steps. You do that with a sponsor. You find a sponsor usually at a meeting, okay? The 12 steps. You work the 12 steps by doing the work as it's laid out in the book. Is your fellowship's book. Each fellowship, Alcoholics Anonymous has the big book. Narcotics Anonymous has the basic text. ACA, they have the little red book. So they all have different books. You get into a program, you get into a fellowship, and they'll have a program laid out in a book, and you do the program. That's the 12 steps. Then you have the 12-step fellowship. That's the people. That's the community. It's very important that you understand the difference. That there's 12-step fellowship. You go to meetings with these people. You hang out with these people. You work the steps with these people. And you've got the program itself, the 12 steps. You work those. Those are between you and a sponsor to bring about this shift. So both are important, but neither is a substitute for the other. So just wanted to point that out to you. Now, beyond all of those therapy and 12-step programs and alternatives to 12 steps, you've got treatment. Treatment, inpatient treatment and outpatient treatment. Inpatient, yes, sorry. We also need to mention Yoga of Recovery. This is also Durga Leela's work, her wonderful work of bringing Ayurveda, yoga, and the 12 steps together also. She's incredible. So that's another place to look. One more place I want to mention right now. In this day and age, we have online recovery. If you cannot make it to a meeting face-to-face, or maybe you have the flu, can't get out of the house for some reason. Maybe in the beginning, you're just too isolated, too scared to get to a meeting, to get in front of people. Look up intherooms.com, intherooms.com. Online 12-step meetings, right from the comfort of your home. And it's powerful, it's amazing, and it really works. So check that out also. All right, so now we got treatment, inpatient treatment. Here's the deal with treatment. If you can get it, and you can get good treatment, get it. If you go to inpatient treatment, you are going to be removed from the environment where you have been using or acting out addictively. So there's a real value to leaving the environment where you've been and getting a little bit of distance between you and those behaviors. Very important. Also, you're going to be in front of counselors, and you're going to be in front of peers, all of whom are also trying to get sober. And you're going to have a lot of feedback and a lot of care. You're going to have people taking care of you to a great extent, making meals for you, helping you to understand what has taken place in your life. And so it's very valuable. Treatment, I say, is only as good as its counselors. So the treatment counselors, the better and more experienced they are, in my opinion, the better off the treatment center. So you have to do a little research. You have to talk to people in the field and become familiar. It doesn't take long. You could spend a couple of hours if you're speaking to somebody who really knows, and you can take a couple of hours, you can figure it out and find a place to go. Now, what are the problems with treatment? The expense of it. It's so expensive. Okay? So expensive. So If you have insurance, usually, if it's decent insurance, usually your insurance will pick up your treatment. If you don't have insurance, then you either have to be wealthy, or a wealthy person is willing to help you get to treatment, because it's just really expensive. Beyond that, there are just a few treatment centers, the Salvation Army, and other treatment centers that are actually nonprofit and free. And these are not that easy to get into. And I'm not going to tell you that it's that pretty, but people get sober there and have saved their life there and have come out of there sober and have a fighting chance at the next level. So these are also possibilities for those who are in difficult financial straits, but who really need treatment. There's also outpatient treatment. Outpatient treatment often takes place after inpatient treatment. So people will leave treatment and they'll go to outpatient. And maybe they'll live in a sober living home where they're in a home with other sober people who are working a program. Outpatient treatment is like, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days a week, depending on the program. And you'll be at treatment, for 5, 6, or 7 hours a day. And so you'll go home and sleep at home at night, and you'll go to treatment during the day. This is for people who have children. This is for people who have jobs that they absolutely just have to be at. But I always say the same thing. You got to do everything to tilt the odds in your favor to stay sober. If you relapse, you're not going to have a job anyway. And if you relapse badly, you may not have children or have custody over your children either. So it may be worth it for you. And I always advocate for good treatment if you can get it. So go away for 30 days and get some real support. Start to understand the dis-ease of addiction. Understand what you're up against. Get some distance. And then come back and work a steady program, 12 steps, outpatient, sober living home if you need it, whatever, therapy, all the rest of it. So to me, it's really about the kitchen sink method of recovery. You do everything. Your life and your recovery, they're one thing. It's not that, see, when I was first getting sober, one of my fears was, I'm going to become one of those people. Now, what did I mean by those people? What I meant was, I was going to be somebody who was in a church basement seven nights out of the week. That was what my life was going to become. I was going to be completely identified with the 12 steps, and nobody outside of the 12-step world would be able to talk to me, and I would not be able to talk to them. My only friends would be people who also spent 7 nights a week in the church basement, and so my life was going to become very, very small. Listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me. Nothing could be further from the truth. My life became epic. My life became amazing. My life became an embarrassment of riches on every level. And I don't mean financially, I mean in every way. Because of the 12 steps, and later on the path of yoga and meditation and nutrition and working on my relationships with a therapist, etc., my life became great. My life became great. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret that nobody wants to tell you in early recovery in 12-step rooms. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Your recovery has to become your own. Your recovery has to become your own. You are going to make decisions for yourself about what works and what doesn't work. It's just that at the beginning, you might need to be humble enough to say, I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And for a little while, I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And you accept the guidance of other people who mean well, who have your best interests in mind. And then, I will talk about Recovery 2.0. Then you get involved with us. And you do whatever you can to get involved on the path of yoga, on the path of meditation, on the path of cleaning out your body, getting the issues out of your tissues, detoxifying the cells of your body, calming the mind to the next level, developing focus and concentration, developing vitality, immunity, and the most incredible relationships you could possibly imagine. Yes, do that. But at first, you got to stay sober one day at a time. You got to start to recognize when that addiction, that addictive thinking starts, and you got to get on the phone with somebody who can help talk you from that place, help get you through tonight, just tonight sober, so that tomorrow morning you wake up and you feel great. And you're like, oh God, I almost relapsed yesterday. My God, I'm so glad I didn't. Always when you're at night, when it's like on you, when the demon is on you, you're like, all you can think of is it'll be easier if I relapse. It'll be better if I relapse. Always in the morning the next day, if you relapse, you feel like shit. If you haven't relapsed, you're like, oh my God, thank God. Thank God I didn't do it. Oh my God. Oh my God. So you see, the big takeaways here. You need a program. You need a community. You alone equals no good. You in community, anything's possible. So remember also that you're susceptible to the energies of the people around you. If you get around other people who are using drugs and alcohol or who are very negative in their energy, and you know what I'm talking about, those people will drag you down, not because you're a weak person, but because we are all susceptible to the energy of other people. So you got to hang out around people who have a higher vibration than you, who are further along the path than you, who carry a positive energy. Hang out with those people and they will lift you up. You will be elevated. And that's another place of humility is I'm susceptible to the energy of other people. I got to hang out around positive people. If you're not trying to make your life better, shit, you're not going to want to be around me. And I'm not going to want to be around you. And that's just a fact. We will not interest each other, you know? So I got to be around people who are trying to go there and want to go there, and they have answers and they live in the solution to this problem rather than complaining and blaming and stuck in that victim energy. And don't get me wrong, I used to be that person. I'm not above that. I was that at the beginning because I was stuck in addiction. That's why I had to have the help of other people who were further along than me. So you got to get in front of these people. They are examples of victory, and you need them in your life. Make sense? Okay? Now, any major questions that absolutely have to be answered right now before we go? My main question for you is this. Can you stay sober tonight? Can you go to bed tonight? Can you wake up tomorrow and be grateful just that you had another sober day today? And can you wake up tomorrow and say, please help me get through another day? Even if you don't know what you're asking, who you're asking, who are you saying that to? It doesn't matter. Just say the words anyway. Please help me get through this day sober. It's what I really want. If you say that every morning, you got a great shot at this thing. Then you got to follow that with action. What 12-step meeting are you going to tomorrow? That's the question. You guys with 5 days, 2 days, 11 days, 10 days, 30 days, 6 months, 3 months, what meeting, what group of sober people are you going to be around tomorrow? You got to think about that tonight so that it's in your mind when you're sleeping. And you wake up tomorrow and you say, please help me get through this day sober. And the first thought that comes into your mind is, I have a meeting to get to this morning at 8 a.m. I have a meeting to get to at 12 noon. I have a meeting to get to at 7 or 7:30 tonight. I'm going to connect with other people in recovery, and by God, we're going to help each other to get through this thing, and we're going to get through another day. That's the deal. If you do that, and you do it every day, you will stay sober. You will get this thing, and you will have that same experience I've had, which is to wake up one day and you'll say, I'm free. And once you say, I'm free, you might also have that feeling of fear of, oh my God, I really want this thing. So that's what I got to say. That's what I got to say. So if you're a part of Recovery 2.0, let's connect with other people who are not a part of Recovery 2.0 and bring them in. And every week, every Monday night, we do this. Every Monday night of the year, we do this, just as a perk of membership. So ask yourself if you feel this is worth it. If you need extra support, please come join us. We're here. We're going to be here. We're not leaving here. So I hope you will make that decision. And you can join us at r20.com, r20.com. And let's keep doing it. Love you guys so much. So let's say the Recovery 2.0 prayer together. Let's say this prayer together. I'm going to say it. You can repeat it. Universe, put me in the places you want me to be, with the people you want me to be with, doing the things you want me to do. Thank you for the joys and challenges of my life. Amen. All right, you guys, so much love. This replay of this video will be posted hopefully tomorrow. It will be posted in our private membership. I will also post it for those who are not members or don't want to join. I will post it on YouTube as well, and we will let you know. Okay? Love you so much. Stay on your recovery path. Ask for help if you need it. Never despair. There is a way through every block. See you guys next week. Much love.